Hi, this is Robin, and this video is about how to design and apply creative skies to composites. In this video workshop, I'm going to demonstrate how to create specialty night skies that can be used in fine art photo composites. You'll see if you just look at these examples here that skies can definitely change the mood or look of a scene. So I think it's useful to know key tools in Photoshop to be able to swap skies to give images a look that you desire. And you can see the same fishing village scene here with a daylight sky, a potentially stormy sky, and a night sky. It really sort of, at least to me, changes the mood of each. So you'll be able to use this principle with the skies that I'm going to demonstrate to give some different looks to your images as well, or convey different moods with your images as well. So specifically, what I am going to demo is how to create a fake or faux, if you want to be fancy about it, starry night sky from scratch, how to add that sky, or basically any sky for that matter, to an image using Photoshop's sky replacement feature, and how to add skies to your sky replacement gallery or presets gallery. I will also show two methods for how to create faked northern lights in a landscape scene. One way will be a generative AI oriented approach, and again, inside Photoshop, so you don't need to buy or use other external tools. And then the second, I'll walk through designing a custom Photoshop brush and then a step-by-step workflow to show you how to make or paint essentially your own custom Aurora Borealis effect. And I'd say that the process I'm going to show you, actually, when I think about it, is one that you could also use to design sunset skies. I'm not going to show how to do that, but you would just have to think about using different colors than I'm going to show, so probably more the warm colors. And since I'm going to be using some motion blurs, you would just have to directionally have them go a different direction. So for a sky, you'd probably want them going in a horizontal or landscape orientation versus what I'm going to show you for these northern lights demos that I'm going to show you here. Now, one thing I won't show you, and you can see it in something like these images here, is when you start changing and modifying skies from a scene, if there are reflective elements in the scene, then you do need to think about casting a reflection from the faked sky onto the reflective surfaces in your scene. I'm not going to cover that in this video because there's already enough to cover, but what I will do is I'll include a link to my video that teaches a process for how to create those reflections in the description below the video. And I might also include a link to a previous video of mine that showed how to create a long exposure or slow shutter speed effect. So in case you want to modify the tools that I'm using and demonstrating here and want to use another one of the tools that I used in that demo, then you know how that works. I will include the start chimes for each demo or main topic in the description below this video. And one last housekeeping thing about subscription information. So if you've already subscribed once to my channel, there's no need to do anything, depending on how many of the other videos you watch on my channel or any future ones. Once you've set it, you're all set up. If you're new and you'd like to get a single notification from YouTube when I post new content, then just click that free subscribe button and the black bell icon below the video, and then you'll be set up to get that notification. I do have a variety of Photoshop related how-to playlist categories on my channel, and I release a free Photoshop workshop each month, so feel free to check out what else is in the collection there. So let's get started. I am going to pause this video for one moment, and then we can get started on demo number one. So this will be demo number 1, and as you can see, we're starting with an absolutely empty workspace here in Photoshop. And in demo number 1, I'm going to show how to create a fake or faux starry night, starry night. So the first thing we have to do is go to the upper left of the interface to File, to the File menu. Click on that, and the very first thing is New. So you want File, New, left click, and you get this dialog box to set up the parameters that you want. Now, what I would suggest is that you use pixel dimensions for this that will be compatible with the size of the files that you typically shoot, so especially your landscape shots, since you're going to want to put this new sky into some of your shots potentially, and it'll be easier to do that if they have a consistent resolution or dimensions. Okay, so now that we have this open and we thought about the pixel dimensions for mine, I am going to, for the width, make mine 5100, and I do keep it set, as you can see, on pixels versus inches or other dimensions, but you can do what you like. And for the height, I'm going to make that 3800. I like to do the resolution at 300, so it's a higher quality. And again, pixels per inch. I want it to be RGB color because that gives, you can see there's other options here if you want to make other things, but for some of the tools in Photoshop, they need to be in RGB color, so I like to leave it there. And again, just for the quality, I like to increase it to 16-bit. And then something else that you may want to check under advanced here for color profile. I don't know what color profile you tend to like to use, but I personally like to use Adobe RGB 1998, so I will set that for mine too. And I think we have it all set here, so I'll just click OK once you get that in. Oh, well, there was one other thing I should have done here probably, so let me just close it for a moment. File New, I didn't point it out. So let me just enter those numbers again here. So and I missed showing you here, so we want the color too. So I would suggest that you set the background color to black. So just double click on that. That'll bring up your color picker. And I just click down at the lower corner and then click OK. And now I think we have everything all set here. So let's click OK. Yeah, that's better for a night sky to have the black. See, no matter how much you do these things, you still have to keep thinking about it, and narrating is slowing me down here a little bit. Okay, so now that we have this, do the same thing that I suggest that we always do when we're working in Photoshop, which is to duplicate this background layer over in the layers panel. So my layers panel is at the top, my properties panel is the bottom, and as you can see, my toolbar is docked right. So just click on this in the background layer, drag it to the bottom of the layers panel to the add new layer icon, that box with the plus, or on that background layer, you can do a Control or Command J for jumping that up. It will achieve the same thing. All right, so once you have that duplicate layer that you can work on, then we're going to go again to the top of the Photoshop interface to the Filter menu. Filter, come down to Noise, and we're going to go out to Add Noise and click. Okay, and you can see we've got this dialog box here for Add Noise, and I keep the preview set to on so I can see what's happening. So just be sure that the check mark is on. I keep mine set to uniform. If you want a more speckled look, you can try Gaussian, but I personally like uniform. And then I also like to keep it clicked on to monochromatic so that Photoshop will be using, or the noise will be using existing tones in the image and not changing colors. Okay, so now I'm going to, oh, it's actually where I kind of like it. I guess I use this pretty frequently. So I would suggest for this first step, you do stay in like the 50 to 51. So let me just lower it just for the sake of changing something, around 50%. To create this first layer of added noise, and you'll see how it looks closer up right there. So click OK. All right, and this is going to be the add noise layer. All right, so now the next thing that you want to do is, because this is kind of a harsh, let me see if we can make it bigger so we can see what's happening with it. Harsh noise that's going on there. And this is going to be a starry night, and stars are not always that sharp and harsh. So we want to add a blur layer to this. So stay on that same layer. And again, go up to the top of the interface to the filter menu. And then this time come down to blur. And we're going to come out to the flyout menu to Gaussian blur. So filter, blur, Gaussian blur, left click. And again, you get a little dialog box. And again, we're trying to soften the edges of the stars, the quote-unquote stars here. So you can, again, keep the preview on so you can see what's happening, and then just move this slider to taste. And I want it to be a lot less than what it is now. Yeah, so this is around a good range. So I typically set mine for this kind of process to around 1.5 pixels for the radius. So once you get it set to that, you can click OK. All right, now we're going to do a different thing. We're going to add an adjustment layer. So come back to the Layers panel, and again, yours might be at the bottom. Come to the bottom of the Layers panel to this circle with the line through to add an adjustment layer. And we're going to come almost all the way down to the bottom to add a threshold adjustment layer, and left click on that, and you can see Photoshop has added the threshold layer with the mask auto added to that. And so what threshold does is it converts your image to a more of a high contrast black and white. So what we want to try to do is now work on getting the spread for the stars. So for that active layer, and you can tell it's active because of the blue highlighting, look at the properties panel for that layer. Again, yours might be at the top. And just on this histogram, see that little handle? Just left click on it and start dragging it towards, and look at this. Or if you just now look at here in the center, you'll see that we are starting to get the stars coming back. Okay, so you can decide for yourself what kind of spread, how dense or how sparse you want them to be. But I'm going to set mine. Let me just look and see what I want here. Yeah, I like that. I like around 58 because you can see enough that they're distinct enough, but you know, it's not too much together either. But do it to your taste. If you want to try it with the 57 or 58 the first time just to try it, that's great. And then for yours, experiment and see if you want it to look differently going forward. Okay, so then we're all set on that layer. So now what I want to do, because we have this basic starry sky, is I want to add a stamp layer. And you don't have to do what I'm going to do here. So at bottom of the Layers panel, click on the Add New Layer icon, which is that box with the plus, to get an empty layer. And then you do what they call the claw move, because you're using multiple keys at the same time. You don't really have to add this layer to do it, but I like it because for me it's cleaner to see what's happening. So with that empty layer active, you simultaneously press Shift, Control or Command, Alt or Option, and E. And then now we have the stamp layer, which is essentially a merge of everything, or a composite of everything that has come before it. So essentially, I'm creating a new base layer to work from here. Okay, so now that we have this stamp layer, I want to add a second blur step. So again, come back to the top of the interface, to the filter menu, click on that, come down to where it says blur, And again, we're going to add another Gaussian blur. So again, just to make these stars, these fake stars, a little less sharp or intense. So again, now even this 1.5 is a little bit much. So let's pull that to the left to make it a little less blurred. Yeah, I think that looks pretty good because you can see it's softened the edges, but it's not so blurred that you don't know. I mean, if you're capturing stars in camera, depending on the camera you have, they're probably going to be a little bit softer and you're going to have to sharpen them up when you do post-processing. So I think this is good for what we're working with here because we don't want this to be too sharp relative to the landscape you're going to composite it into. Okay, so click OK once you got that. And so I'm going to label this just so you know for reference. So this is the stamp layer plus second blur. Did I spell it right now? Okay. All right, so now you can, if you want, we've softened the edges. If you want, you can save this sky as a black starry night by coming to the top of the interface to this little hamburger menu. So right adjacent to the where it says layers, there should be a little hamburger or a stacked lines menu, and you can come down to where it says flatten image, and what that will do is collapse everything down to one layer, and then you can do a file save as and give a name to this file. So you might want to call it Black Starry Night or whatever it is that you'll remember will be meaningful to you. But if you want to add some color, which is why I haven't collapsed this, then you can do that too. So you could come again to the bottom of the layers panel to the add new adjustment layer icon, which is the circle with the line through it, and you could use a solid color to add to this. And I don't know, so if you want a dusky sort of sky, trying to figure out where I see a color family I like. That's 2. Okay, let's go with that color there. So as you can see, I use these handles to pull up and down to get me into the color family that I want. And then you can have a choice from darker to lighter or more saturated to less saturated. So you just click wherever you want, and whatever you are creating will show up here so you can see the color that you're getting. And that might be a little bit darker than what I would like. I'd like it more in this range here. So let's just click OK. All right, so now we have that there. And once you have the color, you're obviously hiding your stars that we just created, and we don't want to do that. So in that layers panel, you'll see the word normal. That's the beginning of where all the blend modes are. So you can click that down arrow, and we're going to hit screen. Then use the screen blend mode. So now we have a starry sky with more of a blue background. And you could do the same thing. So once you've created that, you could save that as a separate and more of a blue starry night. Okay, so let me do that process now. So flatten with the hamburger menu, flatten image, and you can see now we're down to one layer, and then file, save as, and I'm not going to save because I already actually have previously saved for my own use a black starry sky and a blue starry sky. So I just want to let you know that that's the process. So save it wherever you want to save that sky on your computer. Okay, so now these skies, either the black or the blue or whatever colors you're creating, can be added to your sky replacement gallery presets, or if you keep it as a file like this, you can also use to just, in another image, you would duplicate the layer again so you don't do anything. And even if you have another image open and you want to drag this into that image, you can click on the move tool at the top of the toolbar. It looks like a cross, and then just click and drag the sky into another image for making composites. So this is the end of demo number 1, which showed how to step through creating a fake starry night sky. So I'm going to pause and get set up for demo number 2, which will be how to change a sky using the edit sky replacement function in Photoshop. So this will be demo number 2, and as I said, it will be about how to change a sky using the edit sky replacement function in Photoshop. And I will be working with this stock photo, and it is from Unsplash, and the photographer's name is Anna. If I can, I will, if there's the licensing's right to it, I will try to include a link to this image in case you want to try to experiment with this same image. So you will be able to use sky replacement, which is the interface I'm going to show you how to go through here in this demo, for actual skies that you've shot, for commercial sky packs that you've acquired, or even with these custom designed skies like I'm demonstrating in this video workshop. So what you have to do is do what I've done here, is open the image that you want to do the sky swap on. So this is just a plain solid blue night sky here. So, you know, perhaps we can add that starry night sky that we just created and see how that works. Fingers crossed. So again, first thing I always recommend you do is duplicate the background layer in the layers panel. So I'll just click on that and drag it to the bottom to the add new layer icon, the box with the plus, or do a Control or Command J to jump up a copy. And now we're going to go to the upper left of the Photoshop interface here to the edit menu and come down to where it says sky replacement. And just an FYI, I believe sky replacement was introduced to Photoshop in Photoshop 2021. So if you are using something prior to that, you likely will not have this feature. Okay. But just a heads up on that. All right, so click on sky replacement, and we get this sky replacement dialog box that comes up. And you'll see that when it comes up, let's see, let me cancel because I think I did something else here. Edit, sky replacement. I clicked on it while I was thinking. So I don't know if you noticed here, but it was all solid blue and basically the color blue of this before. So when this interface comes up, it shows the last used sky in this little preview box, and it auto-fills the sky area on your image. So you have the option to change from whatever is the last sky that was used and use a different sky or add a different sky or whatever it is that you want to do here. So what you have to do looking at this interface, just to step through the different settings and how they work, you see this little down arrow next to the preview, so you can left click on that, and again it shows various skies that I have used before. And then there's this little scroll bar here, so you can see this is one of the ones under my specialty skies. So as you go through this, you'll see, look at these white headings, that sky replacement, the preset gallery, is organized by categories. Okay, and so when you get, if you import skies from other people, they'll be put in under those people's names or that company's names, but they're all organized by these categories. You can also, if you want, click on this little manila folder icon right down here and set up your own category. So that's and just name it whatever you want the category to be. Now, if you want to add a sky, so we just in demo number 1 created a fake starry sky. So let's say that I want to add that starry sky to this image, and it's a new sky. So in your case, you might just be creating it for the first time. You would click on this little plus symbol in the box down here, and you get it. You have to have this box expanded to see it. Okay, so you have to have clicked on that little down arrow to get the previews and to get the box. And if you click on that, that will take you to your computer so you can add additional skies. Okay, so just wherever you saved your folder with your fake starry sky or any other sky that you want, just click on this and go to it and you can import it. Now, I am not going to do that because I have already loaded the black starry sky and the blue starry sky. So I'm just going to click on the one that I want right there. And now, I don't know if you can see, but it has added the blue starry sky to my image. Okay, I hope that helps. All right, so now that we have that added to this, I'm going to walk through and show you the different things that are here. So first of all, while we're still back after having clicked on that down arrow, you see this little settings cog right here. If you click on that, you'll see you can get more skies, you can import images, or you can download free skies. So that, I think, will take you to Adobe Discover, where you can get different portfolios or collections of other free skies. You can rename the skies. So let's say you create a sky and you want to call it Black Starry Night or Blue Starry Night, or you want to revise something or add something. That's where you would be able to do that. If you decide you don't want a certain sky in here that you've added and it's just getting to be too onerous to go through all of them, you can click on the one so you can see it's active when it has the blue frame around it. So you can delete skies too. So I will just get out of that. And to get out of that, you just click up in this area here, still inside sky replacement. Okay, then we go to the upper left sky tools. So the two I mostly use are these top two here. So this, you can see, just looks like the move tool from your regular Photoshop toolbar. So if you want to move the positioning or reposition the sky that you've imported, then you can use this tool and just click and move it around. And I'm not going to bother to do that now. But you just have to be sure that you're, let me shrink this down, looking at your whole image when you do that, because sometimes it'll move it in or down or wherever, and you want to be sure that you're going to keep the sky on the whole area where you want the sky. Another thing you can do is use this tool here, which is it's, I guess, basically a sky painting tool is the best way, or sky brush, and that lets you, if it's a plus, can you see inside my icon here, inside the yellow, the green here, there's a plus symbol. So if you want to add to where the sky is, you would paint with the plus showing. If you want to take away from where the sky is, you would paint with the minus. And the way you'd get the minus is to press Alt or Option, and that will, it should, yeah, there you go. See, so now it's a plus, now it's a minus. So you can either add to where the sky is or take away from where the sky has spilled using that sky brush. All right, the next thing what we're going to look at here is then coming back to these other settings down in the rest of this interface, or this dialog box, whatever you want to call it. So the first slider is Shift Edge, and that affects where the border between the sky and the original image begins. So that's like right here. So the edge of the original image is the mountains, and we've added the sky. And let me see if I can zoom in any more and see if it helps. Yeah, my mouse is getting a little flaky here. See how it affects what the edge looks like. So the more to the right that you pull this slider, I believe the more the sky will overlay into your image. Yeah, so watch the image versus where I'm pulling the slider. So I'm pulling the slider right, and you can see it's coming in more. And if you pull it to the left, more of the original scene shows. So I want to keep mine basically where it was because I like that it's pretty much at the edge of my mountains there. The next slider is to fade the edge, and this one controls how much feathering there is along the edges of the sky and the original image. So again, more to the right should be more feathered at the edges. Let's just look and see if it changes anything. In this image, it may not change it. It may be when there's more distinctive skies, it might show. And at the left, to the left, yeah, see, the left is more stark, and this is more feathered or more transitional. I actually like it a little more stark, so I think I will come this way for mine. Okay, the next slider we have here is brightness, and that refers to brightness of the sky. So these are the sky adjustments. So the more to the right, the brighter the sky will be, the more to the left, the darker the sky will be. Okay, I'll leave mine just around there, and it doesn't mean you need to put it on these settings. I'm just going to leave it where it is. All right, the next one that we have here is temperature, and again, this makes the sky color cooler or warmer. So more to the left is cooler, which for a night sky probably makes some sense, and then more to the right is warmer with the yellows. So maybe for daylight, if you're doing a daylight sky replacement, you might want to warm it up a little bit. Scale resizes the sky. So you may have some limitations depending on how much you could contract and still show this sky. Because if you come in, it's almost like what I said about the move tool on the skies. It's going to come in if you contract. So if you scale it down, you should be pretty good if you scale it up. I'm not going to do it on this, but if you have clouds, it'll make the clouds consume more of the space, or they'll look like larger clouds. So that's something to keep in mind. I'm also not going to hit flip and click that on. Flip flips the sky horizontally. So again, if you're working with something like clouds and where light is hitting the clouds, or where the clouds are falling behind your landscape, you may want to hit flip and move them to the opposite side of the scene, so it either matches the direction of light or just it balances the original scene a little bit better. Okay, so now we've gotten through the sky adjustments. Now we're coming down to the foreground adjustments. And if you have it on, I can get a little bigger again here. If you have it on the multiply, it's going to keep it the lighting darker. If you change it, and again, watch the scene and see if anything changes. If you change it to screen, I kind of actually like that. So you just would click this little down arrow and you have a choice for lighting mode of multiplier screen. So for this image, I think I'm going to leave it on screen because I kind of like the idea of the mountains being lit up a little bit more. Okay. The next thing that we have is foreground light, or foreground lighting, and that affects the foreground contrast. So if it's set to 0, there's no adjustment made, but if you pull it to the right, you'll get more and more contrast. See, if you're looking at the image as I'm pulling this. So I want to soften it up a little bit, but I don't want too stark a contrast on my particular image. So you can experiment for yours. So again, these are not formulas that I'm showing you. I'm just telling you what the tools do, and then you slide the slider to see where you like it for the look for your image. Okay, the edge lighting adjusts the lighting to the original scene's object images. So higher should reduce the haloing along the edges because there's more contrast. So let's just see if that happens. And again, 0 means you're making no adjustment. Yeah. So that is getting a little harsher. So I'll just leave mine for this image there. The final foreground adjustment you can make is for a color adjustment, and that affects how much of the foreground, so in my case this mountain village, is being affected by the color of the sky. So if you have it to the complete left, there's no adjustment. The middle is somewhat, and if you come to the right, it's going to be a big adjustment. Now, again, you're not going to see much of anything here because it's blue, but if you put a sunset sky into a scene and then start pulling that to the right, it will look like it's blending with your image more because it'll pull the colors of your sunset down onto your scene. Okay, so for mine, as I said, for this image, it's not going to make that much of a difference, so I just want you to know what the processes are and what they do, what each of the sliders do. And then the final thing to consider is the output. And I almost always leave mine set to new layers versus a duplicate layer. A duplicate layer will be sent to the layers stack just as a flattened single layer. By using new layers, it's a multi-tiered or sub-segmented, however you want to think about it, set of layers for sky replacement that has masks and things like that. So that will let you be able to make adjustments to those masks if you want to. So I'll leave it on new layers and I will click OK. And here we go, back in the layers panel. You can see that now we have a sky replacement group, and it has added all of these different sublayers. So that's what it was referring to by layers. And as I said, here is the sky layer. So there's the fake starry sky layer that we added. And then you can see it has masked the landscape from the original image versus the sky. So that has worked the way we wanted it to, and hopefully, if I go a little bigger, you can see that now, as opposed to that solid blue, we've got that fake starry sky in the image. And normally what I do is after I get this, if I don't want to make any adjustments right away, I just click this little down arrow once, and it collapses that whole group, and then I typically click on that layer just to highlight it so I know where I am in the layer stack. So that's the last thing that I have done. So now that is the end of demo number 2. And I've showed how to use and work with this sky replacement function in Photoshop, how to load the faked starry sky or any sky that you've created in Photoshop and load it into sky replacement as part of the sky presets, and then how to apply the presets and make different settings to the sky. So I am going to pause this now and get set up for demo number 3. And that in demo number 3, I'm going to show how to create fake northern lights or Aurora Borealis type of look. So hold on. So this will be demo number 3, and in this demo you can see I have set aside the image that we created with the swapped in starry sky from demo number 2, and I'm going to be using that in just a moment, but we want to show you something else first. So this demo is going to be how to create faked northern lights or Aurora Borealis sort of look. Now, I just want to mention right here before I get through it that the method I'm going to show could be used to create faked sunsets too. I would say just use different colors. So obviously for sunsets, you're thinking more about yellows, reds, oranges, and perhaps a little hint of gray blues for if there's some clouds in the sky. But rather than the colors I'm going to show for the Aurora Borealis or the northern lights examples here. So you would use different colors, and then you would use different motion blur directions if you're going to do a sunset. So I'm going to do some different verticals and things like that here. Obviously, if you're going to do a slow motion blur kind of thing for a sky, you probably want it to mostly be in a more horizontal direction. So I am going to show 2 methods to create faked northern lights look in Photoshop. In the first one, I will show how to use the Firefly that's inside Photoshop, so the generative AI inside Photoshop. Or if you want, you can go to Firefly on the web and create it there and then import it or open it as a file once you get saved back to your computer into Photoshop. So either way, but I'm going to show you how to do it inside Photoshop. And then the second method that I'm going to show you for a faked Northern Lights look is to create a custom brush and then to paint in a sky and then to combine that with some long exposure motion effects. Okay, and I will just warn you that the second method is a lot of steps. So, bear with me and just sort of be forewarned that it's a lot of steps to go through. Part of it, or almost half of it, let's say a third of it, is creating the custom brush. So if you save the brush after you've created it, then you won't have to go through those steps again. You'll have it to reuse that brush. So anyway, let's get started on the first method to fake a northern sky look, northern lights look, and this is going to be using Firefly. So we're going to do the same thing we did for the faked starry sky. We're going to create a new open file here. So go up to the upper left to File, click on that, New, click. And again, we're going to set up the parameters, and I think I'll just use the same dimensions that I used for the starry sky. And again, you can use whatever you want, but I would suggest that maybe you take dimensions that are roughly in the range of the pixel dimensions of most of your images, so that this won't be smaller or have less resolution or will look like it doesn't fit with your image. Again, I like 300 for higher resolution. RGB color, so we have more flexibility to use different tools in Photoshop, 16-bit for higher quality. And again, when we did the starry sky in demo number 1, I had changed it to black, but since this is going to be lighter, let me just make this more of a gray so it's a more neutral background. And for me, on my computer and my system in Photoshop, I use Adobe RGB 1998, so whatever color profile you use, you can click on that if you want to. And I think we have all the dimensions. Yes. So once you get all of that set, just click OK and it should launch. There we go, a new empty file. Okay, so now again, same thing that we have done in other situations in the layers panel. For that background layer, let's just drag it to the bottom of the layers panel to the add new layer icon, that box with the plus, or do a Control or Command J to get the duplicate copy. And now what we want to do is, if we want to work with the generative AI in Photoshop, we have to have a selection active. So to select all, because I want to select this entire thing, it's a Control or Command plus an A for all. Okay, and so now you can see we've got the marching ants around this entire area, so now we can work with generative fill. Now you'll notice that I have my contextual taskbar locked, or pinned, I guess is the term they use, up here. If you don't have a contextual taskbar open, you can come to the window menu, come all the way down and click on contextual taskbar and it will launch it. And the thing I didn't like when they first introduced this was this thing would be jumping all over the page. If you don't mind that, that's fine. I personally do not like it jumping all over things I'm doing. So you can click on these little 3 dots and I have my pinned in a specific location, so it's not going to move around. So if you want to do that, you can do that too. Okay, so once you have the contextual taskbar open, then you would click on the words generative fill in that button, and it gives you a place to enter a prompt. So that's when you would say whatever you want to do for the Northern Lights or Aurora Borealis. And so I'm going to type, what do I want to type? I guess I don't want it to look too cartoony or painterly, so I'll type photo realistic northern, can I have the spelling right? Northern Lights. And again, you could put Aurora Borealis there if you want, see what happens. Photorealistic, maybe would be better. All right, and they don't have to be perfect sentences either. And with the Northern Lights, you tend to get a lot of greens and magentas and yellows and some dark blues. So I think I will just try greens, comma, magentas, and see if it gives me something that looks like what I think of when I think of a northern light. All right, and once you get your prompt in there and you have your selection active, click on the generate button, and then you have to wait while Photoshop processes. And what it will do is in your properties panel, it will generate 3 options for you. So you can review the 3 options and see if one of them is something you like. So there's option number 1. You can see it has the blue frame around it. Here's option number 2. Now, the thing to keep in mind is if you want to use this to put into another image, like this one over here, or import into your sky preset gallery for sky replacement, then you don't want to have big landscape, things like this intruding into the sky, because then they're going to show up in your image. So that's something to keep in mind. If you're just trying to generate a northern sky image to use for some art project, then that won't matter. Okay, and then I can click on number 3 here. See, and this isn't too bad, and you could actually get rid of something like this using the remove tool. But let's just say you don't like any of these, and you could, but I do like the colors. So once you do that in your properties panel over here on the right where my highlighter is, you'll see there's the prompt that I used, photorealistic northern lights, greens, magentas. And okay, let's say I didn't care for any of these, then you can just click on that generate button there again. And I do have to warn you, though, depending on how many credits you have for generative AI, then you may not want to use too many things up. Oh, so this one is actually pretty nice, and it's got a low enough landscape that if you put your landscape in front of it, you would just mostly get this. That's option number 4. 5. No, I don't care for that as much. And 6. That one's very nice. All right, so what I typically do is once I decide if there's one of these AI options that I want, I get rid of the other ones. So let's say this one is not one I cared about. So if you highlight it and see the little trash bin, then just left click to get rid of it. This one I like. This one with the trees I don't want, so I'll click the trash bin. And this one isn't bad, but it's a little bit much. So I will click the trash bin on that. This is okay. And I think I'll get rid of that one too, so I'll click. The reason I'm telling you to get rid of these is that if you save it as you're building up your images, it will add a lot of extra memory or storage needed to your image. I would say for me, this one here is my favorite, so I think I'll just get rid of that one there. Okay, so then again, once you get this, then you could go up to the hamburger menu in the layers panel, left click on that, and come down to flatten image. And then with that single image, you can come up to File, Save As, and then save this to someplace on your computer. So let me just see if I can do this here. All right, I'll save it to my desktop. What do I want to call this? I want to call this Firefly Northern Lights Test. Okay. And then I'll just click save, and it should save it to my desktop. And I feel okay with the LCW. It's a compression, and that's good. It's not a lossy compression, so I'll click OK for that. All right, so now you'll see it's saving. So now it has saved this, so I want to reuse it and import it into Photoshop into the sky replacement. Then I could use this for another image if I want to. So that's the quick way to create northern lights using Firefly. If you want to use generative AI to create northern lights. So let me close that. And now we're going to come back, and this is method number 2 for creating custom northern lights look. Okay, let me expand. Okay, so the first thing that I would suggest with this is if you're going to be creating your own custom Northern Lights or Aurora Borealis skies to be able to use in your Photoshop images or in your composites, I would suggest do some research either in books or on the web or wherever, or else generate some of these faked ones from Firefly to get a sense of what the shapes are and how the Northern Lights looks. Honestly, I think the best thing would be if you go online and like go to Google Images or something and just do a search on Northern Lights and see what real photographs of Northern Lights look like and get some reference images that you can use to help you figure out how to be inspired to create your own realistic looking custom designed Northern Lights. All right. So with that in mind, let's just say, okay, I'm just going to fake it here rather than try to copy something just to keep things moving kind of quickly. So we're going to start with this faked starry night that I had added in using sky replacement into this stock landscape here. So again, typical thing in the layers panel before we do anything to go through all this whole process, I'm going to duplicate this layer by dragging it to the bottom of the layers panel to the box with the plus. We get the duplicate copy. So now the next thing I want to do while I'm on this duplicate copy is to select the sky. So we'll go to the top of the Photoshop interface to select sky. Here we go. And Photoshop does its thing, and you have the marching ants around the sky. Now, what I like to do is just a little bit of cleanup. So I don't need to try to grab the sky. I'm not going to be that perfectionist for this image between these trees, and some of this has selected some of the mountaintops. So I'm going to go to the toolbar and come down to the quick selection tool, which is this brush with the little loop, and left click on that and get the black to make it active. And you'll see that in the center of my highlighter, the white is actually the brush part inside the highlighter. So you can see by default, it's on a plus. I'm going to press Alt or Option and change that to a minus to take away from where I don't want the selection. So let's just, and I just nudge from out. So the selection is this area in here. So I'm nudging what I don't want from the outside in. This is missing the top of the mountain there. All right, and I'm not going to get too perfectionist about it, but you'll see, okay, so we have our selection of the sky. So now what I want to do is to add a mask to that layer. So bottom of the layers panel, come to the box with the circle, which is add layer mask, and you can see that we have added a mask that the white. Here, let me just click on. So if you press and hold Alt or Option and click on that mask, then you can see the actual mask. And so you can see there's areas here where there's some more gray, which could get affected. So if you want to clean, as I call it, that mask a little bit, you can press, and I'm going to go back to my neutral tool here, Control or Command and L. And what that will do is it'll open this levels dialog box. You've got the histogram here. So to clean up the whites and make them a little bit more pristine, then you can click on the white end, the typical histogram blacks, midtones, whites, click on that handle, pull it to the left, and watch the image. And it's cleaning up the whites a bit. And then if I go to the far left handle, which is the blacks, I should be able to get rid of some of these grays. Let's see what happens if I click on the midtones. Yeah, so this is cleaning it up a little bit. All right, and that's good enough. So you can see, because masks are mostly black and white, so in Photoshop, as you know, whatever is white in a mask will be shown or acted upon. So if you make an adjustment, that adjustment will show up where the white is. It will not show up where the black is. So that's why I'm trying to get a cleaner mask. So if you feel you need to do that cleaning, then once you get it done, click OK. And then right now you can see the mask is active with the frame around it. So we can click back on the thumbnail. All right, so now optionally, you can add a color gradient to this sky to help enhance the Northern Lights look that we're going for. So I'll show you how to do it, and you can decide whether you want to do this for your image or not. Okay, so in the toolbar, we'll come down to the gradient tool, which is this box that looks like it's a gradient from darker to lighter. So left click on that to make it active. And again, your toolbar might be on the left. So that's the gradient tool. On the option bar up here, each of these tools has its own options or settings that are related to it. So this is the option bar that is affiliated with or associated with the gradient tool. So the first thing you'll notice here, it says gradient. You have a choice of either using the classic gradient or the newer, I guess they call it the live gradient. I like to use the newer one because you can on the fly move things and change things. You have to start over if you use the classic one. So once you decide on the gradient, then come over to this next color box which shows the different gradients. And if you click on this down arrow, then you can see all of the different gradients that are available. And because there's a lot of purples, blues, greens, magentas, things like that in a Northern Lights sky, I'm thinking that I'd like to maybe put a gradient that already starts with a little bit of those purples or whatever. So I'm going to pull this scroll bar at the right under this area right here, that little, it's been exposed with that little down arrow, and I'm going to come down to where it says for mine purples. And again, just think about this. If you're going to be using this process to make sunsets, then think about, well, whether you want oranges or yellows or pastels or whatever you want. Okay, but for the Northern Lights, I'm going to use purples. And I'm looking at, my eye goes right to these two darkest ones here. So I think I'll go with this one here, just left click on it. Okay, and then you can click up in the upper part of the interface to close that box. Next thing over are the different types of gradients that you can use. And most often I would work with this first one, which is the linear or the radial. So you can experiment and see if you like the radial one too, but I'm going to work with the linear gradient, which is this first one here, and you can see the boxes around it to show that it is active. So with that tool active, we've got the thumbnail active, we got the gradient tool active. Now I'm going to be using the gradient and just click and start pulling down. So you can see I'm adding this gradient to the scene, and you can do this at angles if you want, okay? And see, this is why I like the live one, because you can click inside that little circle and move it. You can reposition it, whatever you want to do. Okay, and I want for mine the darker color purple to come more down. So you can click on the little diamond and see where the transition is. So you can affect that too by clicking inside it and pulling it up and down. So I think I want mine to be sort of like that for my sky. Okay, so now once you get your gradient set over here on the right, I'm looking in the layers panel, then what I want to do is copy this sky mask that we already created on the background copy so that the gradient only applies to the sky because we want it to be a Northern Lights sky. So I'm going to press, I don't want to have to create another sky mask, I just want to copy this and reuse it. So to do that, you press Alt or Option, keep it depressed, left click on the mask, drag up to the empty mask, and it'll ask if you want to replace it. You say yes. Okay, so now you can see that we have our gradient, our new colored sky overlaid on there. And again, you can reduce the opacity if you want with this. There's screen. All right, now I've reduced, so I've added the screen blend mode just to be sure that our stars are showing through there. And I've reduced the opacity that's right next to the blend modes. There's two ways to work with it if you're not familiar. You can either click on the word opacity and drag, okay? Or you can click on this little down arrow and pull the slider. Either way, they do the same thing. All right, so now that we've got more of a purpley color as a base for the Northern Lights sky, then I'm going to add a stamp layer. So bottom of the layers panel, click on that box with the plus to add a new empty layer right there. And then the stamp layer, as I've said before, is a merged or composite layer that reflects everything that's done before, but without collapsing it. So press Shift, Control or Command, Alt or Option, and E to create what essentially becomes the new base layer. And it's called a stamp layer. Okay, and as I said, you may not have wanted to add the gradient, so now we're sort of all back at the same base again, where we'd be creating a stamp layer to work with or a duplicate layer to work with, okay? So now what we want to do is to create a custom brush. And there's a number of steps, and now this is going to be more formula, at least if you want it to look like the way mine is looking. But if you want to create this brush and then tweak the settings to your own taste, feel free to do it. And again, once you've created this custom brush, you don't have to go through all these steps again. You can save it as a brush preset and then just start working with it the next time you want to work with it. Or as I said, if you find you want to modify it and combine different brushes in whatever you're doing with your faked skies, then feel free to do that. Okay, so we want to come to the toolbar and come down to the brush tool, which looks like a paintbrush. Left click on that, make sure the black is behind it so that it is active. And then we're going to go, now I can click right here, but if you don't have brush settings open, then come to Window, Brush Settings, and left click on that. And let me move this out of the way. And now we have, you can see the tab that says Brush Settings. Okay, so let me turn off the other things so that we can start from scratch. Okay, so now what we want to do, we've got the brush settings panel launched. Let's start with smoothing here. Okay, and come down to these settings down in this area. And what you'll see are all these different brush tips for different brushes that you have in your collection. And then this will show you what the brush tip is going to look like and how it's going to behave down in this preview area here. So my smoothing is on to start. For the size, I want mine brush to be somewhere in the 45 to 50 pixel range. So this is where I'm saying that's a good range to be working with. So let me just type it in. I'll split the difference. I'll do a 45, okay? So you can see how it has changed the look there. Just you can, every time you add settings, you can see what it does to the preview. Okay, and I want the hardness at 100, so this is very soft. So just click on that handle for hardness and pull it to 100 so you can see, look at how it's affected, whoops, the edges. All right, so 40 to 50 pixels for the size. Hardness, you want it at 100%. For the spacing, I think a good place I've found in the brushes I've tried for doing the Northern Lights look is around 215 to 225%. So again, let's maybe split the difference and do it around 220. So see what it's doing? It's separating the brush into a scattered sort of a look. And I think it'll be faster rather than me trying to type it. So you can see now it's gone from one continuous stroke to when you paint with this, it's going to be spread out like that. Okay, so that's all we had to set up in smoothing. Now the next thing that we need for the brush settings under the setting area here is shape dynamics. So just click on that and we get another set of settings that we can use here. So for size, jitter, I want set that to 100%. For diameter, oh, let's not skip over here. So if you're going to be working with a stylus and a tablet, then definitely set it to pen pressure. I'm using a mouse right now, but typically I'd be using a pen, a stylus, and a tablet. So I keep mine on pen pressure. Minimum diameter, I want that on 0. Pen pressure's on, so I think that is it. These can all stay on 0. Okay, so we've got that all set for the shape dynamics. Just be sure. Yeah, okay. And then the next thing we want to add is scattering. So click on that word there. And we definitely want it to be on both axes to spread things out more and to spread them out more randomly. And I set mine to somewhere between 380 to 400. Let me just look and see where it's going here. So let me maybe do 390 since I've been splitting the difference on all of these. And those are just ranges, and as I said, you can experiment for what you want. Well, maybe I'll do 395. Let me see how that looks. Yeah, okay, that's getting a little more overlap, so I like that better. Okay, we have control off. Count should be around 10. Yeah, see, look at, because now it's moving the things closer, so they'll overlap, which is good. Okay. And then the count jitter should be around 20%. Again, I'm sort of watching down here to see what it does. Oh, that looks pretty good at 19, but let's just make it an even number so it's easier to remember. And then control off. Okay, so now once you've done this, you can save this, as I said, as a brush preset to reuse, so you don't have to set up all these different parameters every single time you want to create the brush. So what you would do is come to, I believe, the top of this hamburger menu here. Yeah, and just click on where it says New Brush Preset, and you'll get this box that'll pop up. So what I would suggest is, maybe give it a name with your name and something descriptive. So Northern Lights, and then I'd leave this because this was the 45 size. So it's a hard round 45 was this one. So if let's say you want to create a hard round 60 or a hard round 50 or something, then you have it telling you which one is which when you go to look in the collections. But I would, I've already saved a brush, so I'm not going to do this. But I called mine my initials, then Northern Lights, and then I kept this information. And I do capture the brush size in the preset, the tool settings, and be able to include color. So I'm going to cancel because I've already done this for mine. So I will just close this panel here. I always use the lasso as my neutral tool. It's like resetting my camera back so I know where things are. Okay, so now we are at the stage where you can paint in Northern Lights that you would like in a design you'd like. And this is where you're going to be using the custom brush that you just created. And again, where it might be useful to have a reference Northern Lights that you could use, or else just do whatever you want, be very creative with it. Okay, so now what I want to do here, and things are falling apart on my desk, so I'm going to get things set up here again for a moment. All right, I'm going to pause this for a moment because things started falling over on my desk. Hold on a second. Sorry about that. So this is what's going to be a lot of different steps to follow. So you can decide, if you want to go through all this, or if you want to, I will have the start time for this if it's getting to be too long to watch all of this in one sitting, okay, in one sitting. All right, so the next thing to do here to create your own custom Northern Lights is to open a new empty or transparent layer. So bottom of the layers panel, click on that box with the plus for a new empty layer. And you want to be sure that your Northern Lights brush that you created is active. So again, on the toolbar, I'm going to click on the brush tool right there, and I'm going to come over to the little icon that shows you the different brush tips, and I'm going to scroll down. And you'll see there's all these different categories. Oh, by the way, so with this, when you create that custom brush and save it, I didn't do it because I've already have one, it will put your new custom brush at the very bottom of whatever list of brushes that you have already loaded into Photoshop. It will put it at the very bottom, so don't think that you lost it. So you can come down to where it is and left click on it, and if you want to drag it up somewhere and reposition where it's located, you can do that. Okay, so mine, I did do that with mine. So I have my own category of custom brushes. So you can just click on that little arrow to expand it. And I have miscellaneous brushes here. So I am going to use this, here was 45 brush, I think that we did there. And then I will click up here. So that should be set as my current brush. And it shows that it's the 45 right there that we just created. Okay, so now you want to choose the color to paint with in your northern sky. As I said, with northern lights, and as you see, we've done some research on it, a lot of apple greens, magentas, dark blues, yellows, pale greens are typical of the northern lights colors. And you would be picking those colors in your toolbar with the brush tool active with the foreground color picker. So let's click that. And I want to start with an apple green as my first color. So I'm going to just drag and click in here somewhere till I see a color family I like. Yeah, so these are the apple greens. So I will see where the little center of the inside my highlighter is. I'm just going to click on there and it'll show me this is the color I've selected with my color picker. So click OK. And now it has established that as the foreground color. I'm on the empty layer where I can paint. And you just start painting where you want. Okay, so, and again, I'm not doing a tap, tap, tap. I'm just painting and going to be dragging the brush. So this is the custom brush that we've created. And I'm just did one stroke across. Maybe I'll do another one over here. Maybe I'll do another here. And again, you don't have to follow these shapes I'm doing. You can go horizontally, you can make loops. You know, as I said, I made a loop here, so you can do whatever you want. I just put some of these little extra, almost as if I was building a leaf or a tree branch here, just to get some different little shapes going on. Okay, so now that doesn't look very northern light-y. So the next thing we want to do is to blur these random jittered lights. Brush strokes rather. Sorry, I'm calling them lights. All right, so the first thing we do before we get into any kind of working with blur is convert this layer where we painted. And let me just, so we don't get confused when we have multiple layers. So these are the apple greens color, okay? So over here in the empty space on that layer, we're going to right click to generate this menu, and we're going to convert to a smart object. So left click on that. So right click, and you'll see it's created the little icon that says that this is now a smart object, because these don't have that. All right, with that converted to a smart object, we're going to go to the filter menu at the top of the interface right up here, come down to blur, and then go to the flyout and come down to motion blur. Okay, and we get this motion blur dialog box, and you can see it has already done something. And what we want to do is, as you can see, you can set the preview or not. I always keep the preview on so I can see what's happening. So we're going to set this angle to perfectly vertical to 90 degrees. Okay, so you can see now it's stretching it upwards that way. And then this distance is affecting the blur. So more to the left is less blur, more to the right is more blur. So let's get a fair amount of blur going on here. That might be too much. Let me do it. It looked like when I was passing, and then, yeah, there we go. So let's see, you're trying to get that night Northern Lights kind of streaky look. Okay. And now you can see why we wanted to do the smart object, because if you look here in the layers panel, it has generated some sub-layers to the original layer. It has added a mask, and it has added a thing that says motion blur. So if you want to adjust, let's say you come back and you say, oh, that's not really enough blur, or that's too much blur, you can double click on the words motion blur, and it will open it up to right where you left your settings. And if you want to add a little bit more, a little bit less, whatever you can. So let's just change it, say 905, just for something different here. Okay. And okay. All right, so then the one thing that you'll notice is that if we zoom in here so you can see better, the northern lights are coming all the way down onto the landscape, and I don't want them to do that. So that's where I'm going to reuse this mask that was created. So we'll do the same thing we did before. We'll just copy it. So press Alt or Option, hold that, left click on the mask, and drag it up to that layer to replace the layer. And now, because, as I said before, in Photoshop with masks, the white is what reveals or shows and the black hides. So the adjustment that was made, the painting that was made, is only showing where the white mask is allowing it to. All right, so now let's, I don't know, maybe add some more of this or some other color. Maybe let's just, well, I'll add another layer. All right, so bottom of the layers panel, add new layer. Icon right there, we get this, and let's just maybe add some more second set apple greens. All right, so now again we're going to paint with our custom brush, and I'll just do some others to give it a little bit more oomph maybe. And again, since I'm working with the mouse right now, I'm just clicking and dragging with that custom brush. All right, let's convert this to a smart object again. So right click on that layer, come down to convert to smart object, be sure the little icon is there, back to filter, come down to blur, come out to motion blur. All right, and I think for this one, this layer, I'll keep it at that same setting, so click OK. And again, I want to get whatever blurred onto the land out of there, so Alt or Option, drag that up, so we've taken the blurred, and you can lower the opacity a little bit if you want. Okay, so now let's maybe add a second color. So again, bottom of the layers panel, add new layer icon, plus with the box with the plus, we've got this. And since when I think of Northern Lights, as I said, I think of magentas. So let's do a magenta layer. Okay, and then come back to our color picker, right here, the foreground color picker, left click on that. Let's come up and click where we see magentas. All right, that's like a good color. I'm just clicking anywhere. And again, it's your taste. So you pick, you might not want any magentas. You might want more purples or something, or dark blues, so just, or yellows. Pick the colors that you want. Okay, there's okay. So now you can see that's the new color to be painted with the same custom brush. So I'm going to paint over the same general area as I just did here a moment ago. Want to get enough here so that it will show up when we start blurring things. And this is all just random what I'm doing here. We'll see if it works. Okay. All right, so let's say that's good enough. And so now we want to blur the magenta layer. So again, over on the magenta layer, right click, come down to Convert to Smart Object. Be sure the icon is there. Come to the top to Filter, Blur, come down to Motion Blur. Now, want to do something a little bit differently this time because I want it to offset a little bit. So let's just offset it a little bit with changing this to an 85. Okay, and then maybe lower this a little bit. Or maybe go up a little bit. There we go. I just do it short distances and then look to see what's happening. All right, I'll say that that's good enough for that. All right, let's just do one more because when I think of the Northern Lights, I think of them having some lighter colors in there too. And let's get the sky mask back on there so we keep it where we want. And then one last layer. Okay, and I'll do a pale yellows here. All right, we've got the pale yellow there, so we can get a base to the Northern Lights. I'm just putting some pieces that can stretch up here. Okay, and again, there's no formula way to do it. Right click, Convert to Smart Object, Filter, Blur, Motion Blur, and I think I'll put this one back to 90. Okay, I'll leave that at that for now. Oh, maybe I'll go to 500 just to keep it even. All right, and click OK. And again, move the sky mask up. All right, so once you get however many colors or whatever that you want, I wonder if I can, with this layer, just try something here. Edit, transform. Yeah, well, I'm going to skip that. All right. I was going to see if I can squish this up a little bit, but I think I'll just leave it the way it is. I could use the marquee tool and just select that area, but I'm just going to leave it alone. Okay, so you repeat these steps for as many colors as you want, and I'm going to stop there. And then what you do is you would select and make active your different Northern Lights layers that you've just created to create a group from them. So we have this one active, so you can press the Shift key and hold the Shift key and click on this one, this one, this one. All right, so I had those layers that were all my Northern Lights layers. So then bottom of the layers panel, you come to this icon that looks like a little manila folder and left click on that, and that creates a group. It's a group icon. And if you click on this little arrow, it'll expand and show you that all of those sky colors that were painted are now in a single group together to represent the Northern Lights. And again, this isn't going to be perfect because I'd spend more time with all of this and how this looks, but just to get you the steps, and then you can do what you like and spend more time on it. Okay, so you want to make sure that there is a group mask. Okay. So you come to the bottom of the layers panel. Sorry, I'm just doing things and forgetting I should be telling you what I'm doing if you're newer to Photoshop. So bottom of the layers panel, click on the box with the circle to add the new mask to that Northern Lights group. And then what we want to do is go back to using the gradient tool again. So on the toolbar, come down to this tool that looks like it's going from dark to light. That's the gradient tool. And we want the options. So again, we have to look at the options bar across the top and for the gradient tool. And again, I'm going to use the active gradient, and the type of gradient I want to use is not the purple and pink anymore, or the magenta, purple and magenta. Let me collapse this. But I want to use one that is a black to transparent. So you can see that should be in the basics. If yours isn't showing here, look under basics and it should be there. Okay. These are ones that I tended to use frequently, so I had them moved to up there. But if you don't see it on top like that, come to basics and grab the one that is black to transparent, and it'll put a frame around it and it'll show you in the preview that it's there. We're going to use the linear gradient again. Click here up at the top just to close that. And I have mine actually set in the options, so you can see it's on the linear. I have mine clicked to reverse, so it's going to actually reverse from transparent to black. Okay, so we'll reveal things and then hide them as we go down here. So I'm going to click on the image and start dragging down it, and you'll see, and again, you can go at any angle you want, and I'm going to be dragging down. So if I want to pull these Northern Lights away from the edge of the landscape, that's what this gradient is letting me do. You can see if you only want them in a certain part of the sky, then you can do that. Okay, so I think I will leave mine in that general area, not down so far. There, okay. All right, so then what you want to do is convert this group that you just created, the group of all the Northern Lights with the gradient, to a smart object. So again, over in the empty area on the right, right click, come down to where it says convert to smart object, and it'll collapse it all into a smart object. And we're going to blur it some more again because it's still kind of streaky. So with that layer, with the smart object active, we're going to come back up to the top. Let me go back to my neutral tool so it doesn't confuse things, and we're not going to use color. Filter, blur, motion blur. And now I'm going to stick with that like 85 to 86 degree angle. Okay. And for distance, let's see what I want here. I'll slide it back and forth till I see something I like. Yes, I think in this 300 pixel range is looking good to me. I kind of like that 302 on it, so let me go to 302. Okay. All right, so now we've blurred that whole group even more. So click OK. And again, because we have the smart object, it's created these sublayers. And again, you could double click on the word motion blur if you want to go back in and readjust it. So now we're going to duplicate this layer. So click on it and drag it down to the add new layer icon, which is the box with the plus. So now we've got the Northern Lights 1 and the Northern Lights copy. And you can see it's made it more intense here by duplicating it. So we can, again, do the same thing that I just talked about. So on this new copy layer, you can double click on the words motion blur and we can adjust them again. So now I'm going to change the angle to a -70. Okay, so it's giving it some other interesting shapes. And I'm going to blur it more. That's actually not bad. I think I'll leave it there at 534. And then I'll click OK. And so you can see it's getting softer and softer. And you can decide how much of the distinctive shapes you want versus how soft you want it by just adjusting the blurriness of all of these different layers. And you can click OK to accept that. And then if you want, you can lower in the layers panel right adjacent to the blend modes. You can lower the opacity a little bit if you want, if it's too much. All right, so it's a little bit more than 50% for mine. Okay, so now the next thing you can do to add a little bit more interest to it, and again, this is optional, and you might just like the way it looks, is to add a layer style. So we're going to double left click on here, and this opens up the layer style dialog box. And what I want to add, here's all the different layer styles right here, is an outer glow. So I'll come down, it's almost at the bottom here, and click on outer glow. See, it just adds a little bit more interesting haze here. And I want the blend mode, oh, it's already there, good. On linear dodge, so if it's not there, you can click the little down arrow and find linear dodge. You can experiment and do whatever opacity you like, but I kind of like it around 50 to 55%. Yeah, so that gives it a nice little haze. And then I leave the noise at 0. And then you can select whatever color you want for the glow. I kind of like this blue since I've been doing my own things, because there's a lot of blue in this scene. So I'm going to use the baby blue. But if you click on this, you see you can, just like you would use any other color picker, you might want to use white, depending on what you're doing. You might want to use yellow. So just pick whatever color you would like your glow to be. And then let's see, the spread I keep on softer and 0. The size, yeah, 95 pixels should be good. And when you get that the way you like, then just click OK here at the upper right of that layer style box. And so that is the northern light that we've created here. And again, as I said, I would spend more time if I was doing this for myself and experiment back and forth with different things, but it gives you the basic steps. So we've gone from this initial starry night sky scene, or you could even do it from a plain scene without the starry sky, to something like this, okay? And it's got, if we zoom in here, we can see we've still retained some of the stars in there, so we haven't entirely lost them to get the, and you can go, as I said, it doesn't have to just go up like I did. You can go horizontally with the lights, you can make different shapes, you can just experiment with what you want. So, important thing to remember with this is, if you have a reflective surface, like I have a lake here in this mountain scene, you have to remember to add whatever you do to the sky to the reflective portion of your image for realism if you're making composites. I am not going to repeat how to do that here, but I will include the pointer to my video workshop on how to create reflections on a step-by-step basis in another workshop on my channel. So that will be available for you if you want to have that for reference. So in summary here, you can change the mood, time of day, sense of locale or weather by the skies that you put into your images and your image composites. By using Photoshop, you can create and save fake or faux skies with the tools and process that I demoed in this particular workshop. Then you can add those skies to your sky replacement presets folder and then swap in the fakes, but you can also use real skies, as I pointed out, into your original images to make fine art composites. So anyway, I hope you have fun enjoying and discovering, what can be achieved with creative skies in Photoshop, and take care.